Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors with Favors Financial Recovery. So the series topic today is Big Five Personality Traits and Overcoming Financial Setback. And so I'm not quite sure if you are familiar with the Big Five Personality Traits, which are the acronym NEOAC. So Neuroticism, Extraversion, Openness to Experience, Agreeableness, and Conscientiousness. And so I discussed the Big Five personality traits in multiple series, multiple videos to give you an understanding about where you might fit in terms of your personality, and then maybe how you might begin to change areas of your personality. So I want to apply it, however, for this series topic to finances, to give you an understanding about how we make decisions when we are anxious, which is really neuroticism under the Big Five personality traits, when we tend to be too extroverted in the way that we sort of tell too much about our finances. Sometimes we can be open to experiences but not prepared enough to go into those experiences in terms of financially. We can be too agreeable that people know that they could call you and ask you for money and you would give it to them. And so, and then conscientiousness, sometimes we can be hardworking and conscientious about what we're doing, but then there are oftentimes we can be unorganized in what we are doing as well, because we always fail to create a financial plan for multiple areas of our lives. And so a discussion about the Big Five personality traits and its application, I believe, to personal finances is, I think it's very important to consider, so that you kind of take into consideration what it is you need to accomplish financially, and whether or not your personality might be hindering you from accomplishing that goal. So this is Favors Financial Recovery. The series topic is Big Five Personality Traits and Overcoming Financial Setback. Please like the video, hit the notification bell if you are interested in further videos, and thank you very much for visiting the channel. So this discussion is subject to fair use. Here are your learning objectives. So by the end of this lecture, you will be able to do the following, which is explain the Big Five personality traits, apply one or more personality traits to current financial setback, design a plan that considers one or more personality traits in your financial recovery. So it's always important to understand what your personality is and how your personality affects your personal finances, or your ability to sustain yourself financially, and or your ability to pursue financial stability. And so understanding the Big Five personality traits, and these are not the only personality types that I'm going to discuss in this lecture, but they are the ones that I feel that are more focused, much easier to discuss if you wanted to open some sort of dialogue with a friend. And I think that explaining them or summarizing them or outlining them, understanding what they are, is very important. So then you want to take one or more personality trait and apply it to your current financial setback, since you are in a financial setback. It doesn't make any sense to know the concept and not know how it could be applied. So if you are making decisions out of fear, out of anxiety, that means under the Big Five personality traits, you would fall under neuroticism. And so then you would have to begin addressing why you are anxious about spending money, anxious about holding on to money. There may be some childhood implications. There may be some other types of triggers that you might want to consider. And then design a plan that considers one or more personality traits in your financial recovery, because the goal is to recover. And if if your neuroticism or your anxiety was hindering you during your financial setback, it is something that you want to consider in terms of addressing. But then you may want to consider one of the other personality traits, like openness to experience, with limits, of course, openness to experience. So you take a particular area of your personal finances and say, I'm going to be a little bit more risk taking, not so much to the point that I leave myself uncovered financially, but enough so that I can, get out of this fear of money or losing money or being triggered in this way. So these are your learning objectives. So the mission of Favors Financial Recovery is to offer psychology concepts and approaches to educate and encourage individuals to overcome financial setback, which is important because a lot of times people struggle with this idea of surviving. You live off just enough, right? You do just enough. And that's really, surviving is still setback. And that's something that has come to me as a result of doing multiple audio lessons under different series categories, that surviving is really still setback. And so you want to get to a point in your life where you cross the finish line, which is overcoming setback. So that's our mission. The mission of Favors Financial Recovery is to offer psychology concepts and approaches to educate and encourage individuals to overcome financial setback. So we do have core values: personal responsibility, growth mindset, mastery orientation, ethical dealings, integrity, and recovery. So personal responsibility is essentially you understanding that as an adult, you are 100% responsible for yourself. It doesn't matter what your mother didn't give you, what your father didn't do for you. At some point in your life, you have to take control of yourself and take responsibility for yourself. And because you always have to think to yourself, what if that person died? What if the person who is helping you died? What are you going to do? Do you have a job? Do you have enough money to live on if you decided not to work? Which is not necessarily a good idea, but you may have the types of funds that sort of allow you to do that. And so personal responsibility is something that you must consider going forward, because you have to take personal responsibility when it comes to your finances. You can't blame everybody. You can't say that this person, if they would have given me the money, I would have been able to pay the rent. That's not the statement you need to make. The statement you need to make is, if I had done what I was supposed to do in terms of keeping a job and staying on that job and building up a savings, I would have had my rent. So personal responsibility. Growth mindset is connected to Carol Dweck in her book Mindset, where she discusses the difference between fixed mindset and growth mindset. So fixed mindset is essentially you believe that abilities are fixed, they cannot be developed over time. Whereas growth mindset is you believe your abilities can develop over time and that you are willing to overcome challenges. So that's something that you want to do, because I have had multiple financial setbacks, some due to the financial recession, now one due to the pandemic, and then there was a financial setback earlier in my years, and I was on the road to overcoming that financial setback, but I got distracted. So I've had to multiple times create plans for my plans to try to get out of my financial setback. And so part of this series is sort of like educating not only myself, but anyone willing to listen. So that's the growth mindset. Mastery orientation is connected to goal orientation. So there's a difference between learning goal orientation and then performance goal orientation. In learning goal orientation, it is learning for learning's sake. You are trying to understand the content, the knowledge, and master it. Whereas performance goal orientation, you just want to look smart in every every situation. You are willing to know just enough of the content or the knowledge. But in personal finances, to me, you should have a vision for financial stability as well as leading to financial thrive. And so we oftentimes think that we just need to know whatever we need to know for that moment. Okay, so I couldn't pay my credit card, but the full balance, but I still can pay the minimum due. Well, how many financial consultants will tell you that paying the minimum due is going to end up with you paying much more than what you currently owe? And so the best way to think about things like this is to understand, do you have all of the money necessary to pay at the end of the month? And if you don't, you may need to focus on one card or something like that. Now, what we often do, we get multiple cards and we just work through the process of using credit, and we know that we can pay the minimum due. So mastery orientation then would suggest we need to do much better in terms of understanding the impact of credit card debt on, say, our finances as well as on our credit report, and what that really entails and how it affects anything that we are trying to accomplish in other areas of our lives. Because you will find that certain fields do not permit you to enter those fields if you have too much credit card debt, especially the investment, financial services fields. Of course, you can always become your own financial consultant, but if you can't manage money just personally on your own, how will an organization trust you to manage money and finances and investments of clients? And that's how they tend to think. So pursuing a mastery orientation of personal finances is much more important. And then ethical dealings is very important, especially when it comes to credit card debt and paying off that credit card debt, and experiencing a downturn in the economy and with your personal finances, and then experiencing certain events that are no fault of your own. We are in a pandemic right now. We are also experiencing the devastation that Surfside residents have experienced with the building collapse. Well, that's no fault of their own, really, meaning that someone did a shoddy job with building that building. And sure, you could have paid the money to update it and do everything you needed to do, but I think on some level it was going to fall. And what you might have someone saying just in general in terms of credit card debt, well, look, I've lost my job, and I got to do what I got to do. So if I got to make sure I pay my rent. So if I can't, pay that credit card debt, I just have to put it off. But the problem with our understanding of things is that we still owe that credit card. We still owe the mortgage. We still owe the loans. We still owe the rent. And so we need to get better at planning for these unforeseen circumstances. Even if the building did not collapse, the area is the type of area in Surfside that receives a lot of hurricanes or weather-related type things that could happen to that area. And so even if you never thought that you would experience a building collapsing on you, you still know enough about the area and the situation to plan accordingly, so that if your building is hit resulting from a weather related issue, you can still move yourself and some of your belongings to a motel or to even another city. So ethical dealings has a lot to do with our understanding about the people we owe and our responsibility to the people we owe. Integrity is always about character and how you present yourself in dealings, right? But definitely in terms of your reputation. Your credit score says a lot about your reputation or your inability or your ability to manage your finances. I've always said there's a very small percentage of people who really got an understanding of finances early in life, like in their 20s. See, not everyone is affected by downturns in life. And you don't necessarily have to be rich. You just could have been a person in your 20s who believed in saving money. And now in your 40s, you have amassed a good fortune of savings. And so it says a lot about your ability to save money, to pay your bills on time, to be trusted with personal finances. And then, of course, recovery, because the goal is to recover. And so one of the things that I know, I notice a lot of times that, again, people like the survivor's mode, right? And I don't think people actually plan for recovery. A recovery, if for example you lost your job, like I lost my job during the recession, and so it was my teaching job. Well, the recovery would be for me to recover and get back on that job. Now there are other steps after recovery. Is something that I haven't considered yet, but that would, it's kind of like a return to stasis. So I got the job, now stay on the job. Recovery is not just the one event. It's continuous. It's staying on the job, because if you lost your job due to an unforeseen circumstance that had really nothing to do with you, and then you get it back again, the goal is not to stay on that job for 2 years and quit again. And quit, right? Because you have to recover. And so it's going to take some time for you to recover financially, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, in all different areas of your life because of that particular setback that affected you. So these are your core values. These are our core values. So, big 5 personality traits, and we're going to look at Costa and McCrae. So, what are the big 5 personality traits? Costa and McCrae suggest that personality is structured among 5 dimensions. They argue that personality traits tend to be bipolar, with some people scoring on diagnostic tests at either extremes, high or low. The following make up the big 5. So these are the ones: NEOAC, Neuroticism, Extraversion, Openness to Experience, Agreeableness, Conscientiousness. So we're going to look at the high-low dimensions and how personality traits and high-low dimensions affect our understanding of personal finances, which if we have a bad understanding would contribute to our financial setback, and how we might need to consider personality in terms of financial recovery. So let's look at neuroticism. We have the high-low dimensions here. So if you high, you tend to be anxious, temperamental, self-conscious, emotional, vulnerable. If you low, you tend to be calm, even-tempered, self-satisfied, comfortable, unemotional. So if you are basing your engagement with personal finances and you are anxious, you're going to make anxious-based decisions, right? Every time you use your money, it is coming from a place of fear. That means that something on the inside of you is affecting or getting in the way of you understanding how to solve the problem with that particular personal finance, right? So for example, you may be anxious in the idea that you don't have enough money to pay your rent, right? A very simple understanding. And then you say, well, I'm anxious about that, of course, and so I need to find a way to pay my rent. So I'm going to use I'm going to use the money I already have in the bank, and then I'm going to use part of it with the credit card. And you're saying that you are suggesting that money plus credit card will solve the larger problem with paying your rent, versus saying that making more money or adding more hours or maybe taking a second job would actually solve the problem. Because then, or you're going to do that every month, solve your rent problem with a credit card, right? You may be anxious when it comes to how you deal with a family member. You know, sometimes you would rather pay somebody's rent than to let them come and live with you, right? And I'm sort of like that too. But at the same time, what if you had to do that every month? That they know that they can come to you to get part of their rent or their mortgage because they know that you're going to give it to them. So they are working from a place of an anxiety. They got a rent problem themselves, and then they're going to use you as a solution to solve their rent problem versus going out and getting another job like you have another job. It's interesting who we give money to. Here it is, we have multiple jobs or we have multiple hustles that we are working on, but the person who is asking us for money refused to get even one job. They want to basically plan their lives and use you to fund their lifestyle. Suppose the person did have a job. Sometimes some people can have a job, but they don't want to use their money. They want to use your money. And how do you deal with that? Do you continue to pay their rent every time? Remember, you have to pay your own rent. You are personally responsible for yourself. If you needed help, could you go to that person? And then that's a place of anxiety too, because unless it is an emergency-based situation, you shouldn't have to go to somebody with your rent. So that anxiety, that anxiousness that you feel in dealing with your personal problems or dealing with the personal problems of others is going to have an impact on your finances, which is going to make you a little temperamental, more self-conscious, emotional, and definitely vulnerable. Because if you are covering everybody else and not yourself, it's going to lead to you losing your place of residence or losing your job or losing anything that you have worked for. And that was one of my problems in the past with people pleasing, which is, I think, another, psychology based issue, that I made sure everybody else was covered and not myself. So sometimes if a person called and they needed rent, well, I had the money because I was getting school money, and so I would give them the money, not asking for it back. And then when I needed the money and I asked them for money, it turned out to be a loan right from them. So it's better to let people handle their finances, and take responsibility, and you not cover them. And you have to make a decision about whether or not your money is a solution for them, because the person who is using your money to fund their lifestyle is a person who is crying wolf. They don't really need money, they just don't want to use their money. So then when you look at the low dimension, where you are calm, even-tempered, self-satisfied, comfortable, unemotional, it's important because when you make decisions about money, you want to do it from a place of calm. The people who are having to make decisions about money because of the building collapse, they can't be calm. There's no way in the world that they can be calm. They are on an anxiety high alert. And so it's hard for them to be calm in the moment. Eventually, however, when things kind of subside and they have grieved over the people that they have lost, the family members that they have lost, and money begins to pour in terms of, GoFundMe pages and things like that, they're going to have to sit down and be calm in how they utilize the money. Because then you have to remember, or you have to understand, that they are homeless. Unless they have other homes, I don't know what the wealth or income levels were for that particular for the residents of that building. It was on a beach or something on water. So I'm quite sure those people had a lot of money, but you no longer have a home either. And so now you have to use whatever money you get, insurance money, anything like that, to sort of reboot, you know, and recovery is really far off. And so eventually they're going to have to make logically calm based decisions. That means that they're going to have to really uh, bring in their tempers, you know, be even tempered, right? They're going to have to be self-satisfied wherever they are. A lot of people, when they're trying to recover financially, they want to get back completely what they had before. What I needed was to get a job. I lost my job. I ended up being homeless, had to live with family, things like that. But I was able to return to the job. I wasn't worried about the money I made. I just needed to make sure that I had a job. And so sometimes people will get to a point, well, I mean, it's not like what I had before. What you had before is gone. And you're going to have to be comfortable where you are until you can fully recover financially. And then you're going to have to curb your emotions. That means, I'm not saying you can't cry. You will have to go through a grieving process, as we all do. But you're going to have to work from a place of minimum emotions to get yourself back on track. So this is a good example of applying personal finances issues with financial setback and pursuit of financial recovery using the personality trait neuroticism. So let's look at extraversion. So high, you are affectionate, joiner, talkative, fun-loving, active, passionate. And then if you're low, you are reserved, loner, quiet, sober, passive, unfeeling. And so with high, it's very interesting. People can play on your affections for them, right? You know, your money is not my money, and I am not entitled to your money. And it's not good for me to play on your affections for me because you like me, you think I'm a nice person or whatever. And sometimes I notice that when you are nice to people and you tend to be a little affectionate with them, you know, they may be your little play child or something like that, or your friend, they tend to sort of slip in. Can you give me $20? You know, I left my wallet at the house. You know, I forgot. You mind paying for this? You know, they kind of play on your ability to be affectionate, and I don't think you should do that, because if you have the money in your pocket, as I noted in the previous slide, if you have the money, don't cry wolf. And being affectionate in certain instances might require you to be reserved, because if a person is coming at you immediately with money requests, they're going to come at you all the time. But if you look at it from another perspective, the perspective of a person, romantic partner, where you don't want that person to be so stingy with you, because you're not bad with your money, but you know, there's nothing that you wouldn't do to buy them something. And it's nothing worse than being in a relationship where you are doing all of the buying, right, and they're not doing anything. They're not making any kind of effort. Affection in the area of finances reveals a lot. You know, what you think of me. I'm not saying that you need to buy me thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of stuff or whatever, but it would be nice if you had some flowers sent. It would be nice if on your birthday I gave you a new watch or something, or not a new watch, I cooked you a full course meal right on your birthday. It shows a lot how affectionate financially you are towards that person. So, and when you find yourself in relationships where the person doesn't doesn't pull out their wallet at all, and you are the only one, and they're trying to play this sort of reserved play with you, then you may need to be reserved yourself. So then you have joiners and versus loners. So like with a joiner, I'm much more of a loner. And so when I don't do a lot of going to clubs, and I don't spend a lot of money. If I spend money, it's going to be strategic. I might go to a theme park, right? I might go on, vacations, things like that. But you have to manage your finances if you are a joiner. If you like to do a lot of things, if you like to go a lot of places, there's a group of you, right? You want to be careful that everyone who is going on a trip can pay for themselves. It doesn't make any sense that you have to foot not only the bill required of you, but also their bill, because they didn't plan their finances well. They automatically assume that if I got into trouble, we are in another country. I know my friends are not going to leave me here, right? And so when people find out that you are a joiner, you are a talkative, fun-loving, active, passionate person, they begin to play on that. They want whatever you got, they want to be able to use it for wherever they are. And sometimes it may be important for you just to be quiet, to be sober. Don't always display just how, fun-loving you are, because then you end up funding the whole trip for everybody, right? And they would just keep their money to themselves. I'm not saying you can't enjoy yourself. I'm not saying you can't be active. I'm not saying you need to be passive, but you do have to. I think there's a scripture in the Bible: don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. That you reveal too much, like, I want the best. I want the best champagne. I want the best room. I want a suite. I'm buying all new clothes to go on this trip. I want to do the jet skis. That's telling them about the money you have, your abilities. Or if someone is funding the trip for you, they're going to automatically think, well, if they're funding it for you, you're not paying out of pocket, so why can't we experience the same thing too? Why don't they fund us? I mean, it's all one package, right? So sometimes it's not always a good idea to be too extroverted about what you have. Sometimes it might be good just to fake the fact that, girl, I'm on a budget. I want to enjoy myself, but I'm not going to spend too much more than I need to. So I set some boundaries. And then you're going to always have somebody, girl, just live for the day. Why you got to always be on the budget? But remember, the person who says live for the day is always the person who ends up having to come live with you, because they never kept a job. They never kept any savings. They spent all that they had. And then now they get to their midlife, and now they need somewhere to go. They need somewhere to live. No one married them, or they did get married and they divorced them. And so they were very extroverted and then turned out to be financially unstable. So sometimes it's a good idea to really just kind of be quiet about what you have financially, be a little sober. Yes, you are on vacation, and yes, you want to experience the full vacation, but it might be better to do that with one other person, than with the whole group, so that you are not hit financially because of people trying to use you. And make sure that person who you accompany have the finances to support themselves, have the attitude and the belief system. Hey, I got this. I'm not saying I don't need your money, but I got this. I wouldn't go on this vacation if I didn't have it. And so those are your high-low dimensions for extraversion. So openness to experience, so high, imaginative, creative, original, prefers variety, curious, liberal, and then low, down to earth, uncreative, conventional, prefers routine, uncurious, conservative. I think on many levels, all of us need to be in the low dimension of openness to experience. at least the majority of that, especially the routine part, the conservative part, the down to earth part. I do appreciate the ideal of being creative, being a little curious, and preferring variety. But say, for instance, you're thinking about romantic engagement. And a lot of people, their sense of variety is, dating multiple people. You would hear men today, especially YouTubers, talk about adopting a dating rotation, right? You would have women who also, YouTubers, also talk about having a roster of men. And so they look at that as variety. But if you are engaging in these all these types of relationships, it's going to impact you financially eventually. The man may be spending a lot of money with different dates. The woman might be spending a lot of clothes for her dates. And so sometimes routine might be better in that regard. Don't have a dating rotation. Don't have a dating roster. Date, right? But set limits for yourself, right? So that you are not impacted financially. It's important to be imaginative wherever you are. It's important to be imaginative because you want to make sure that you can imagine yourself in a better financial state. So if you prefer too much routine on the low dimension and you just kept one job, you will never really get out of financial setback. You would just be completely in survivor's mode, right? Here it is, you make $25,000 a year and you've been making $25,000 a year for 5 years. And there hasn't been an increase, or if there has been an increase, it's been just a little bit of just increase, but nothing really has changed. Now, does that say a lot about you, that you know how to keep a job, hold down a job, keep to a routine? Yes. Do that. Do keep that going. But if you are wanting to get out of financial setback, or just even if you may not be in financial setback with $25,000 a year for 5 years, but you want to increase your ability to make much more money, maybe an extra $5,000 a year to bring you to 30,000, you are going to have to get imaginative. You may have to create and then creative. You may have to come up with an original ideal. You may have to create a YouTube channel. You may have to write a book. You may have to create a podcast, which would lead to being curious about where you want to take yourself, right? And how to make more money. And you may need to be a little liberal in your thinking about how to accomplish that. That doesn't mean that you should be criminal. It just means that you may be the type of person who grew up with this idea that you get one job, you stay on that job for 25 years, and then you retire. Well, those days are really over. You may have a good number of people who still have those types of jobs, a good percentage of people who still have those types of jobs at certain factories, certain companies, things like that, higher brand companies. But it's unlikely that you're going to stay on that one job for 25 years and get the type of pension that you really want. And some of these jobs are, cutting back hours just so they don't have to pay health care. So if your mindset has always been like your mother's mindset or your daddy's mindset or their mother and father before them, you get the job, you stay on the job for 25 years, serve the company and leave and retire and get your pension, you may have to rethink that strategy. That strategy might have been seasonal during the times when companies paid for a lot for their workers. There were times that certain companies actually had housing units and pay for health care and pay for a great deal of the the employee's life, basically, right? And so therefore openness to experience might require you to come up with some kind of idea. So that means you're going to have to let go of the convention. You're going to have to be less uncurious, or not uncurious. And then of course, in many ways you still need to be conservative, but you may need to take the risk and be conservative along the way. So that's a way to look at openness to experience in terms of considering your personal finances, financial setback, and then financial recovery. Agreeableness. So high, soft-hearted, trusting, generous, acquiescent, lenient, good-natured. And then low, ruthless, suspicious, stingy, antagonistic, critical, irritable. In some ways, acquiescent and its low dimension, antagonistic, is a very interesting strategy, right? Sometimes you may need to be antagonistic with your finances to prevent people from taking advantage of you. And antagonistic is not necessarily exhibiting antagonistic behavior or having this kind of attitude. You can't touch my finances, right? I'm not going to let you touch my finances. You need to make your own money. All of that can still be true, but I wouldn't want to be acquiescent either. I'm not saying antagonistic is the best strategy, but if you have it in mind, if you sit with yourself and you have this journal in mind, that this is what I'm only willing to give out per month to a friend who might be in trouble, versus that person trying to boss your finances, put you on a guilt trip, and then you end up becoming acquiescent to them. Right, okay, here you go, here's the $20, right? Because when they are acting in that way, they are basically acting antagonistic towards you. They're pouting. They are critical of you. I mean, you always have all this money, but you never give anybody anything. Okay, it may not be for me to give anybody anything, and it's not always for me to serve my family. There's nothing wrong with helping a family member. I needed help, and I'm still willing to help somebody. But at the same time, if all you did was give all your money to your family, you will never have anything to give to a person who is in real need. And so that's why I chose acquiescent first, because then you can work backwards and look at generous and trusting and soft-hearted and see how they kind of lead up to acquiescent, which makes you feel bad, and too lenient and good-natured. Nothing wrong with being good-natured, but people love to take advantage of people who are good-natured. It's something that they can read on them. And as soon as they read it on you, you become their mark. You become their target, and then they begin to con you. And they could be the nicest person. They could be the types of people who you would still hang out with and have dinner with. But when people view you as soft-hearted and trusting, it's like something on the inside of them feels like they got to take advantage of you. I don't know if they want to test it out to see if I say this or lie about this, will she do it? Will he do it? Will he or she become acquiescent to me, right? And so then if they are acting that way, that's essentially them being ruthless, suspicious, stingy, antagonistic, critical, irritable, meaning that they are pouting and they are mad that they can't get their own way. And so the goal then becomes for them to get their own way. They're not trying to achieve the goal to resolve a current financial setback. They're trying to achieve the goal of trying to get you to give them as much as they want, not need, in the moment. And so that's why with agreeableness, that's why I focused on acquiescent and antagonistic, that sometimes you don't have to yell at them. You don't have to say, crazy things or whatever, put them in their place. But you could set a financial goal that, like you see it on a pie chart, or, certain amount goes to shelter costs, certain amount goes to car insurance, other types of creditors, and that little sort of angle, triangle goes to, I don't know, petty cash or something like that. Something that might be, say for instance, a person comes to your house and they get a car flat or something like that, and you may have to have a tow truck driver come out. Well, you have petty cash in the house, and so you might set aside $100 and put it in one of those little containers in your kitchen for things like that. It includes you, but it's not like you have to go and hide in a closet and figure out your finances, right, to see if you can do it. You already know, based upon the planning you've already done prior to the person asking you of something, that I can't do it. So then once you've planned it out and you know your finances, it makes it much easier for you to say no. Just because you have a lot of money in the bank doesn't mean you have that money available. Your mortgage you may have $2,400 in the bank, and your mortgage is $1,200, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have an extra $1,200 to give to somebody else, because you want to make sure that you have your mortgage 1 month ahead. So just in case you lost your job, or just in case something happened, or just in case you had a fire at your house and you had to go and live in a motel. And that's what we do. We think that the money that we have in the bank, the extra money after we paid our bills, is extra money to spend. That only works as if you had another extra $1,200, meaning that 3 times $1,200, 36. Then maybe you can make the decision, okay, I can let go with maybe the $200 or something like that. But it's still not a good idea to let go of that extra $1,200, again, because anything could happen. So this is the personality trait, agreeableness. And then the last one is conscientiousness. Notice that this is not conscious. Conscious means awareness. Conscientiousness means hearty. So let's look at high: conscientious, hardworking, well organized, punctual, ambitious, persevering. And then look at low: negligent, lazy, disorganized, late, aimless, quitting. And if you find someone who is struggling with their finances, every month they come up short. There is somewhere that they are lazy in their understanding. They are negligent in their understanding. They are disorganized and late in places, and aimless and quitting all the time. Because I tend to question people who say they have problems with money when they turn around and come over to your house and have their hair done, or have on a new outfit, or have on new sneakers, or bought a new something, whatever the new something is. I'm going to have a problem with that. Then the person can say, well, it's not up to you to tell me about my personal finances. I mean, if I want to go out and shop, I can do that. That's my business. Okay, then if that's your business, don't ask me for the money, because you have the money to take care of your shelter costs right there in the new hair, the new suit, the new shoes, the new jewelry. That's the money. And that's the problem that I had in a previous situation when I was, just graduating from high school, and I got a customer service job maybe a year or so out. And there was this girl on the job. Like I said, people tend to mark you when they see you are helpful and, good natured and saying hi to them or something like that. It's like when you say hi and you be nice to them, you immediately become their mark. So she marked me. And one day she started to sit by me. We didn't necessarily have assigned seating, but we did have, seating that was habit for us. And so one day, one of the people who sat near me was gone for the day or something like that, and she decided to come over to where I was sitting, and she would kind of eyeball me, look around, be on the phone having a conversation with the customer as I was. But it reminded me of a man who comes to the bar and sits near you, and while you're drinking whatever you're drinking, and then he kind of eyeballs you a little bit, sort of flirts a little bit, turns around, kind of looks you up and down. She was kind of doing that. And I was I was sort of uncomfortable with her doing that. And then eventually she kept coming by to sit near me, near that next seat or whatever. And then one day, it's not courage. I was going to say she got up to courage. It's not courage. It was basically her game. She asked for some money. Oh, I really do. Can you lend me whatever? I can't remember that amount, but I'm going to say $60 or something like that. Now, never, granted, we both worked the same job. We worked the same money. She didn't have any kids. She wasn't married. Neither was I. And I don't even think she had her own apartment, but I did. And she didn't have any money, right? And so I went on ahead. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't ask what she needed it for, because when you are a people pleaser, and I'm not today, but when you are a people pleaser, you don't ask questions. You are acquiescent, as in the agreeableness personality trait. And so I didn't ask any questions. Well, she came back, I think, the next day or a day or two, with her hair done, new clothes on, new shoes. And the tennis shoes that she had on were like Nike or something like that. Those things were fresh. They were really nice. And so I'm thinking to myself, where did she get the money if she needed some money from me? And I didn't ask her the question or anything like that. And maybe I should have, but I got the clue that I needed to get without necessarily having to ask her the question. That she didn't want to use her money. She wanted to use my money. She made more than enough money. We worked the same job. We worked the same hours, sometimes overtime. So she had more than enough money to accomplish the goals that she set for herself financially in terms of buying new items. But she just didn't want to use her money. And something about that bothered me. It turned my stomach. It put an anger in me that I didn't know was possible. And I never gave her money again. She asked again, because remember, when they mark you, they are looking to get you to do that very same thing again. They want to create the habit. They want to create the habit of you being acquiescent, agreeable to them. But in terms of conscious, I didn't become really conscientious, but I did much better in recognizing when someone was using me for money. Right now, I still struggled along the way. I went to college. I got school money, scholarship money, loan money, and a family member began using my money to, fund their lifestyle, and it was a struggle with me. But then there was a time that I made a decision. I prayed about it, and then I made a decision that I can't do this anymore, and that whatever I gave them, they had to pay it back. And so then I became conscientious in terms of, and I still wouldn't use that word, but just better organized. I became more organized in how I understood the value of money and making sure that it covered me, meaning that I have to live in this apartment for 30 days or whatever and pay my rent on the first every month, and I need to make sure that I have that. So that became a much more conscientious thing, and I began to continue working hard. I was organized, and I had gotten a lot better at paying bills, and I was very close to paying a great number of my bills. But I then uprooted and relocated from Dallas to San Diego, which affected my completion of my repayment goals. I was about two or three cards ready to finish and pay off, and I hindered my learning progress. So then that made me become very disorganized. I was late on my bills. Then I sort of dropped the aim of paying off all my bills and getting out of that financial setback. And then I basically quit altogether. And so you know that when you have outstanding debt, It takes 7 years to go to get off the credit report. So I basically quit paying them, and so I was less persevering in my goal. And it also has a lot to do with me listening to the wrong people, telling those people telling me that I can do a lot differently with my credit cards. But I was conscientious, and that's what I should have focused on. And so that's why it goes back to ethical dealings, integrity, right? That you want to make sure that whatever goal you start, you can finish, you can complete. And if you are getting credit cards, you got to make sure that you can get that done. So this is conscientiousness. So overcoming financial setback, what should you do? Neuroticism. Determine how anxious or calm you are when it comes to managing finances. And you know it. If you are slamming the table down, or you are balling up paper, or you find yourself yelling all throughout the house or whatever, you are highly anxious. And any decision that you make is going to have a negative impact. And so you need to maybe set aside a better day, a specific day that you handle finances, say on a Tuesday. So then you don't have the rest of the week all anxious and anxiety ridden, huffing and puffing at people and things like that. So extroversion. Recall how talkative or quiet you have been when it came to managing finances. So if people know about your finances based upon you and what you say about your finances, people know what they can get from you, how they can come to you at a particular time in a month, right, to get whatever it is you got. Usually a man who has a dating rotation oftentimes doesn't really need to work, because he got one woman who will really, all of the women will give him some kind of money, hundreds of dollars, right? And because women, we do talk too much. We talk too much about what we got. And then whatever we are wearing tells a lot to the person about what we got. So you want to think about how talkative or quiet you have been when it came to managing your finances. Openness. So reflect on the ways in which you use your money in a variety of ways, and are those times you use your money routinely. And the routine, to sustain financial stability, you want to be routine. You want to be habit forming. You don't want to take a lot of risks. That's why if you want to take risks, then the best thing to do is not touch your principal, and then work some overtime to get the money to take the risk, versus risking all that you have and betting and thinking that you're going to get a proper return. How is it that you think some of these people who are lulled into a false sense of belief, false sense of truth when it comes to Ponzi schemes, and they use all of their money? I can't believe you got $300,000 in the bank. You are retired, and you're going to give that person $300,000 of your money and just hope for the best? No, you make sure that you keep whatever it is you're going to keep and give them 10,000. That means you shouldn't tell them what you have. Don't tell them what your net worth is, so that you don't become a person who use your money inappropriately because you want it to be open to risk. Well, you're at an age now, you can't afford to be open to too many risks. The people who invested in the investors of the financial recession, who lost everything, they were so open to the subprime lending and that trading on the market, collateralized debt and mortgage-backed securities, and they were so open to experience because they thought they were going to get a lot of money. But it was no different than a Ponzi scheme, and it was robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so you want to maintain routines, because remember, you are 100% responsible for yourself. So if you give over your $300,000, who's going to take care of you? People don't have that kind of money to take care of you today. And so that's something that I want you to think about. And then agreeableness, reflect on the times you have been trusting, stingy, as a high-low dimension, acquiescent, antagonist, or antagonistic, high-low dimensions, and then lenient or critical. And I think there's a time and a place to be stingy. And I think there's a time and a place to be trusting. It just depends on the target. So you in your life, it may be a good idea to be frugal, thrifty, not always too stingy, but setting good boundaries. But you may have to be trusting when it comes to giving your money over to charity, and just trusting that they're doing what they need to do with it. So that's something that you may be agreeable with. And then acquiescent and antagonistic is something I just don't want to be a person who is acquiescent. I just really don't. Even in a good situation, because that makes you, I think that eventually creates passive aggression in you, that you feel like you have to give over everything and that other person is not doing anything. And then lenient and critical, it depends on what it is. Like I said, if you got a person who's always asking you for their rent, at some point you're going to have to sit them down and have a conversation, which is the critical aspect of it. Because then you giving them money all the time is you being too lenient. And you can't be that agreeable in your life to the point that you give them, even rich people have boundaries with their families. Even people who have trust and will inherit, the rich person sets boundaries. They can only get so much at 18 years old, then they can get so much at 23, then 25, 30, 35, and then the rest later, right? They don't give their kids everything all at once, even if they may have access to everything all at once. They don't allow them to have sustained access, right? So you want to reflect on your agreeableness. And then the last one again is conscientious. Design a plan for how you will be punctual with paying bills, well organized in overall financial management, and ambitious in pursuing financial stability. And if you set that as a vision, that financial stability is the goal, I believe that is something that will help you along your journey, because you can accomplish many more things if you are financially stable. But it's definitely hard to do that if you are sort of making ends meet, struggling paycheck to paycheck. So you do need a conscientious plan. All right. Hopefully you were able to gain some insight from this series topic. Like, subscribe, and visit. Like the video, hit the notification bell for future videos. You can visit my website, which is still in development, reginayfavors.com. You can always email me with a question, reginayfavors@yahoo.com. You will be able to purchase the book by the end of October 2021. I'm hoping that I will have it completed, completely revised rather. It is already written and done. I just have to edit it. It is Overcoming Setback, 5 Keys for Entering and Exiting Correction. Thank you for visiting the channel. Coming soon is my new book that I am working on presently and hope to complete by the end of the year, December 2021, preferably February 2022, and that is Favors, Financial Recovery, Psychological Approaches to Overcoming Financial Setback with some workbook elements. So it is it will be the book that will support the audio series, although I have developed the audio series prior to actually writing the book. So be on the lookout for this new book. When it comes out, when I finish, I will create an audio introduction to the book. Thank you again for visiting the channel.